Right, welcome back still to Arise, a special edition of the morning show this morning, and I'm here with Layla and Rufai Hosseini. Joining us now to speak further on expectations and surprises so far in the race. We will be going straight to Professor Biodun. I hear Kayode is not here, but we'll just go to Associate Professor at Bayes University, Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, or let me call you Prof, I should say. Good morning. It's a pleasure talking to you, sir. I'd like to know your take on the results released so far. A lot of people say it's going to be a dead heat. Is it looking like that with what you're seeing? 12 local governments gone already?
Well, I think it's been so far so good. We are beginning to get signals of who the winner and probably who the winner and the losers will be. But more importantly in this circumstance is the fact that the election has been peaceful, largely violence-free, and looking like some kind of improvement on what we experienced in Ondo State. And it's gratifying at the end of the day that no monkey has been in the range of our progress. Monkey range is absent. There's no spanner in the works. I think it's actually something we should be celebratory about, really.
Thank you, Professor Adeniyi, for your opening thoughts on that. I'd like to expand on your thoughts on yesterday's elections themselves. You just said that they were largely violence-free, but of course there were situations here and there, such as in a particular polling station in Akure. We did get reports that there were political thugs there shooting, etc. How do you react to yesterday's elections overall?
Well, in the build-up to the elections, there were different kinds of preparations. Of course, we know that election is a multi-stakeholder affair beyond the efforts of the umpire, INEC. The security agencies are also involved, and the politicians are involved, the civil society, monitors and observers. Wow. But from all reports we've got, all reports coming up, particularly from the civil society organizations, is being that there has been free, fair, and credible election. And that's what has been what we've been advocating for. If we are able to have a transparent election where the processes are free, where there is openness, where the people's right, to exercise their franchise has not been trampled upon, largely so anyway, but if we're able to achieve it, I think we should feel some sense of relief. I do know that it cannot be 100% perfect. There are pockets of violence, like we had. Police assured us that there will be violence, there won't be disturbances, and largely I think they lived up to the expectation, irrespective of the silos of crisis that were reported in some circles. Layla.
Right. There are other pockets of, electoral misdemeanors. Take, for instance, vote buying that the candidate of the PDP complained about. But another one was the big feature that fake news showed in all of this. Fake news took the day yesterday with a story coming out that with a doctored video showing that the wife of the governor was hurt, was shot in the States. And they had to refute that. But I'll have your take on that when we come back from this quick commercial break. All right? We'll talk about the role fake news have played in all of this. I will come back and expand the conversation, still on violence and fake news and the likes. All right, welcome back. Still the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We're monitoring the Ondo election. It's a special edition. We're telling you what's happening. In case you don't know what's happening, I'll keep you up to speed. Results in 12 local governments have been announced as we speak. 8 more to come from 9 o'clock this morning. INEC will reconvene and they'll announce about 6 more to come, I should say, from 9 o'clock this morning. So 12 have been announced already. We have 6 more local governments to go. And we're monitoring the pulse of the situation. We've got somebody right on ground there in Akure, the Ondo State capital. We've got our own Tokumbo Taiwo there. We also have Associate Professor at Bayes University, Dr. Biodun Adeniyi. And I asked a question earlier, and I'll just reiterate. I talked about the role of fake news in this election. I talked about a lot other election misdemeanors. Take, for instance, if you check the front page of Guardian Sunday, it says Jegede accuses observers of inducement, blames INEC for card reader malfunction. It took him over an hour yesterday to vote. He said when he got to his turn, the card reader stopped working. Your take on all of this, sir?
Yes, thanks, Rufai. But the question of fake news is one that has been with us over the years, especially with the revolution in communication, evening up to the rise of the social media. The space of information news dissemination is often obfuscated, often nebulous and imprecise, and you have all kinds of shenanigans coming in as practitioners. And of course, the human configuration is replete with different characters, mischief makers and people who are wound, to be good. Because sometimes you cannot prevent mischief makers from operating, especially when they have their spaces. And the political environment, the time for political contestation is another opportunity for them to express, their tendency to be nymphomaniacs. So we can't rule some of those fake news out. They have this space, they can do it. But the onus is on us, to develop our own sense of discernment and separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's what I think happened yesterday when, after that fake news came out, your sister organization went out, very professionally, to deny, to refute it, to retract it. That's a professional, the most standard or the best, standard that you expect of any organization to do. Having done that, I think the matter was just as good as dead. It was as dead as doo-doo. And it was good that we could move on from there. But again, it's a reminder of the time that we are in, a time where we have to be circumspect about the information that will sink in, and for us to second-guess information, particularly those coming from suspicious sources. And on the question of complaints, from some aspirants, we do not expect an election that is perfect, a process, that is perfect. I haven't seen a perfect electionary process anywhere in the world. But what matters is how close we can be to perfection. And I think we are moving up in this ladder, from what is happening in the circle in the last couple of months, particularly Edo, and as we are again seeing in Ondo State, Rufai.
Thank you, Prof, for your views on that. Let's keep up to date with this as well. I mean, we also heard that COVID-19 protocols were, of course, thrown out of the window. I think to a certain extent that was kind of expected, unfortunately. But how do you react to that? And on what my colleague said, Rufai, with regards to the card readers not working, I mean, how do we continue like this? We can't continue to make excuses for it.
Yes, apologies, Rufai, I forgot that part of your question. It's actually very important, for us to continue to perfect the introduction of technology into this process, because we keep making the argument that we're in an age of technology. Technology is practically upon us, and it has gone a long way, to improve the quality and standard of life in different areas. It has brought about the much desired, inalienable freedom, happiness, and prosperity that humanity desires. And if it is working in the other sectors, one sector that the introduction of technology should be emphasized is actually the electioneering process. Card reader failing, maybe not unexpected, but again, it's been one too many. From in the 2015 election, we remember the experience of President Jonathan in Bayelsa. We'll expect that 6 years down the line, we will have perfected this process. Even if we're going to have some kind of failures, it shouldn't be on the scale of a major aspirant, a principal contestant having to wait for 1 hour before he could vote. That was shameful on the part of INEC, and I think it's an area they need to look at going forward. They have done well, no doubt, but again, we have to continue to call on them, as people who desire a completely civilized process. We have to continue to call on them, to continue to raise the ante, if they desire, if they want our salute, as the case could be. Leila.
Right. There were talks yesterday. In fact, when our correspondent in Ondo, Tokunbo Tai, was giving his report, prior to that time, in fact, let me just put a background to it. Prior to that time, when I was talking to Festus Okoye about on Thursday, Friday, I talked about vote buying, and he said they were going to deploy EFCC officials to the polling units. They're going to apprehend people that are trying to buy votes and the like. And Tokunbo Tai confirmed it yesterday that we have some EFCC officials that just came and stayed for 30 minutes, which I was a little bit skeptical about, because you're supposed to stay till the end of the election, because maybe once they had left, then vote buying would have ensued. And now I'm seeing on the papers that many are arrested for electoral offenses, including vote buying. That's what the police commissioner is saying. My big, squabble with all of this is who will prosecute them. Festus Okoye told me here on Friday, he said the problem we have with prosecution of people, and I'm trying to quote him now, not verbatim anyway, is the fact that once the police officers that apprehend these people are done with their electoral duties, they go back to their state, and charging them and prosecuting them is always a big problem. Now we're having a case of vote buying. How do we prosecute that?
Well, that's a very tricky one, Rufai. Vote buying, turning the electoral process into transaction, monetizing the procedure has been with us for some time, and it's not going to go anytime soon. It's something you can also explain within the larger context of our political economy, and we cannot deny the fact that a larger proportion, a large section of our population is predominantly poor, annihilated, and living in poverty. And when you flash cash in their face, or anytime they have the opportunity to help themselves with some cash, of course, they will fall for it. They are vulnerable, even their thinking capacity, their dignity, and all of that have been largely affected. This is a reality, and we have to deal with it anyway, because selling your votes, selling your franchise for cash is mortgaging your conscience. A pot of porridge should not be enough for you to sacrifice or to give up your future. It's something that we have to look at, but it's going to be on a long-term basis. In the short time, prosecution is conceived from the point of view of INEC, but however you look at it, it still amounts to misdemeanor, because we have some other larger crimes, larger infractions on the law that probably would take the attention of the law enforcement agency.
Okay,
and when it comes to misdemeanor, that exchange of cash, something that people do.
Just hold that thought, Prof. We'll come back to you. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back to you. I will continue with this analysis. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're still keeping you up to date with what is happening in Ondo State. And in case you missed it, you're just waking up, you're just joining us on the Rise News channel this morning, I'll say a big good morning to you. But 12 local governments have been declared. The process of coalition and counting started around 10 p.m. yesterday, ended 3 a.m. this morning. We've got a man on ground, Tokunbo Tai, there, that brings us authoritative reports. Says 12 local governments, have been declared. And out of that 12, 9 ALGAs, has gone to APC out of the 12. So 9 local government areas have gone to APC out of the 12. But we'll come back and have a breakdown with Dr. Biodun Adeniyi. But Doctor, I just want you to continue on the last question we're talking about vote buying, card readers not working properly. And I also want you to react to this quickly about Yaga, Yaga Africa decrying vote buying and ballot box stuffing. That's also on the headlines. Yaga is saying, there's a lot of vote buying and ballot box stuffing. I mean, what's your take on that too? And also with the last question you were answering, before we come to a breakdown of what's happening in the states and the local governments, Doctor.
Yeah, all right, Rufai, I tried to explain it, I think, on this show yesterday, on a similar show here yesterday, that, vote buying, it's simply the pattern it is taking now, is a mutation, a kind of progress we're making, ironically, in the evolution of our political and electioneering process, particularly. Before now, what INEC, what politicians usually do was to compromise the electoral officials or just go headlong and disrupt the process using talks, violent means, sometimes also compromising the security agencies. But there's been a groundswell of opinion, against this, and the officials have been under pressure to continue to perform very well and improve, on their performances. They've been in the eye of the world, and they are also trying to live up to expectation. And because of that, politicians have found them impenetrable. Many of them are appearing incorruptible, and they have to shift their attention to the electorate, who are much more vulnerable. So rather than corrupting the umpires, the security agencies, they're now shifting attention to the vulnerable voters. And that's why you will see vote buying. We saw it in Edo, we saw it we are seeing it in Ondo. And the way it is even happening is very, very sophisticated. It's not like, not very open the way it happened 4 or 5 years ago. But again, we do not forget what I was trying to say earlier, that sometimes we have to situate this thing within the larger society that we are in, a society where a large proportion of people live in poverty, and they find it very irresistible. They find the gift of cash almost irresistible. They fall for it. Their dignity is lost. They can hardly think. They can hardly subscribe to any principle. They are weak. So they can be. These things are just there to lure them, and that's why with time we'll probably get out of this. But for now, we have to contend with it, even if we are not justifying it. And politicians, of course, no matter how epistemic they are, they take advantage of this weakness, just to buy the votes and probably get to the levers of state, and continue their acts, so to say. Well, it's something that requires some kind of short and long-term measures to deal with. The short-term measure is to continue with voter education. Voter education, sensitization, enlightenment is very important. We continue this using different languages, not just English language. Minister to the people for them to understand that their conscience is at stake in the circumstance, and their future is particularly at stake. When instead of taking proper decisions, they allow decisions to be taken because of a pot of porridge. This enlightenment is very important on the short-term basis. On the long-term basis, what we need to do is to build the structures, build the institutions, so that we can help them meet their basic needs that they could not meet, and rather than waiting until death comes, they rather just find quick fixes. And one of those quick fixes is to depend on individuals for handouts that rather undignify them, and handouts that rather reduce their personality. That's the crisis we're in, and we'll have to put things in perspective, believing that sooner than later we'll get out of it, Rufai.
And honestly, that's the hope, Prof, that sooner or later we will get out of this. And you said it right. When you sell your vote, your conscience is at stake. And it's very unfortunate to see it happening election after election. Like Rufai said, Professor Adeniyi, let's take a look at the local government areas in which both the results have been announced so far and also the ones that haven't. And I think we should actually start off with the local government areas that have not had their results announced so far and see how they can possibly shape the elections, even though right now, as we know, APC is leading in in 6 of the local government areas. Let's start off with Ilaje and how this can possibly shape what we are seeing here. As we know, it's a riverine community. How much of an impact do the results coming out of Ilaje have, and how do you see them playing out?
All right, Leila. These things, can change even when we do not expect them to change. And I know that one of the candidates is more likely to win in Ilaje. But again, I would not want to be definitive about it, so as not to offend the sensibilities of the other candidates. But even at that, it may still remain dicey because anything can happen. Some of these things, like I said, are very, very unpredictable. And at the end of the day, I can foresee a very close election, like we saw 4 years ago. We are seeing the tilt, we are seeing the progress, we are seeing the reports coming out, and we are seeing, who is likely to carry the day. But again, they can be surprised, but not very likely. But overall, I think, somebody will definitely win, but the margin is going to be very small later.
Sorry, just to correct myself as well, Prof, the APC is leading in 9 of the local government areas so far out of the 12 results that have been
that's right,
collected. Rufai, over to you.
Right. So, Prof, like Leila said, we're going to start having a blow-by-blow account and looking at what happened, probably. Leila has picked one local government that has not been declared. Let me pick one that has been declared. Akoko Northeast, for instance, the APC 16,572, PDP 8,380, ZLP 3,532. I mean, what would you look at and say was behind that result in Akoko Northeast? Was it the northern factor?
The two candidates, I said this yesterday, two candidates, Akeredolu and Jegede, are gentlemen, fine gentlemen, and I said if it was possible, I would just make the two of them governors. I would declare a draw and make the two of them governors. And of course, both of them have mutually attested to that. One of them said, Akeredolu said Jegede is a worthy candidate, and of course, Jegede is also very respectful of Akeredolu. So you can see these, you can see this exemplification of how political contestation should be, something that should be devoid of filth, something that should be civilized, something that shouldn't be die-harded. I saw it played out between these two candidates. But with respect to the local governments you're talking about, the governor is the incumbent. The APC is a party in power. APC has had the opportunity in the last 4 years to prove its mettle, and I think from what the governor has been saying over time, he has achieved a lot in terms of infrastructure, roads, hospitals, irrespective of criticisms of increasing the cost of school fees, increasing school fees. I beg your pardon. So these achievements may have worked in his favor, and I think they were also very hardworking. They worked hard in campaigning, in selling themselves to the populace and telling them the more things they are going to do in the next 4 years. Those things add up really, but we need to understand that Ondo State is not a particularly uninformed state. Ondo people, the citizens, the consciousness is very, very high. They can also be very, very. The question of undecided voters, is not cannot be related to them, and most of them made up their minds even before the campaign started. So these things became rock solid over the period. It consolidated in their hearts and minds, and of course, they follow you through, reflecting in the results you just mentioned, Husseini.
Okay. Okay, Leila, over to you.
Thanks, thanks, Rufai. And let me just ask you, Prof. Would you say that there was any local government area in particular that you've seen the results of that has surprised you, that has stood out maybe as an anomaly or something that wasn't expected?
First of all, I think we also need to commend INEC, for the improvement they are making in introducing technology. Last night I've kept an eye on their portal, not particularly interactive, but very simple to navigate, and of course you get enlightened navigating it. And I saw one local government that was actually very surprising, and I think PDP won that local government with about 47,000 votes. I can't remember the particular local government, and APC came with. APC came with about 16,000 or so. Very interesting result there. In that kind of situation, you see, even if APC was leading overall, and that kind of result was going to come later, it can cancel out all the leads that APC will probably have acquired, So very interesting, really, and it tells us, the tendencies of our voters, how they can be very passionate about some candidates, and that's why political processes can be very interesting, because they're largely difficult to predict. And at the end of the day, we are seeing results coming out. We are seeing indications of who is likely to win and who the losers are going to be. But even then, those indications, cannot be said to be rock solid yet until until the final call is made later. Okay,
I want to take you up on this. The third candidate, because we've just been talking APC and PDP. The third candidate, that's the ZLP candidate. A lot of people said he was going to be a spoiler. I think I was watching the analysis of Godwin Etakibobu yesterday on the Arise News channel, and he said he's going to be a spoiler. So, and I want to put this forward to you, your comment on this. What we have now from the 12 local government
it's actually...
No, I just want to cite something before I finish my question. What we have here, from the 12 local government declared, this is not the final result, so don't quote me anywhere. The APC has got 178,000 votes now. The PDP has got 141,000 votes. The ZLP has got 32,000 votes. If you add the vote the ZLP got with the PDP, it will almost be the number of votes. It will almost be a draw. If you had added the ZLP vote to the PDP vote, it will almost be a draw with what the APC has on ground now. We'll go for a break very soon, just to alert you on that. But, so do you think that Agbo, as it's fondly called, Agbola Ajayi of the ZLP, with the Olusegun Mimiko faction, has been able to act as the real spoilers that they are? And don't forget that most of the local governments that will also come in, the likes of Okitipupa, Odigbo, Ilaje, these are Agbo's heartland too. He will do well in those places when they come in, the riverine areas. So, has he really acted as a spoiler in this election?
Rufai, you and I know that sometimes this thing is about branding, it's about hype. How well you project yourself, to be able to negotiate well, or...
All right, go ahead. We just have 30 seconds to break.
So I was saying that this thing is about hype, it's about branding, so you can position yourself very well for future negotiation. And I do not see, Ondo State people are not Lilliputs, they are very discerning people, like I said earlier. I do not imagine how you can emerge from the shadow of one person. You move from that party to another party. You wanted to be in another shadow, you couldn't make it, then you move to another party, and you think you can upstage people who have been on ground for 4-8 years. I don't think...
Prof, sorry to cut you. We'll go for a quick break. We'll come back to you and you'll continue with that line of thought. Thank you, sir. All right, welcome back. Still the Rise Morning Show right here, special edition. In case you're just joining us, I'll repeat for the opt-in time. We're covering live the Ondo elections. 12 local government areas are in. The APC is leading in 9 of those 12 local government areas. INEC says by 9 a.m. we'll resume collation and giving the results of the remaining local government areas. We've got 6 more local government areas to go in on those states. So that's the update. We have with us Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, Associate Professor at the Bears University. And Doctor, I did ask a question earlier on. I said, is the ZLP candidate, Agbola Ajayi, Agbo, as it's fondly called, out there, as he acted as a spoiler? Because looking at what he's got, 32,000 votes. If you add that now to the votes of the PDP candidates, Itaya Jegede, by now we should be looking at a tie in this election. But it's not looking that way because those 32,000 votes have gone to Agbola Ajayi. What's your take on that, Prof?
Rufai, it's not over until it is over, but if we're saying whether or not he has acted or he's acting as a spoiler for who? A spoiler for Jegede, who he joined at a later time, or a spoiler for Akeredolu, who he was with before he moved, before he cross-carpeted, So it's also very difficult to please him, and of course it takes a lot, from his level of fidelity to ideology, if he could move that easily. And because of the respect I have for Ondo people, but with the greatest respect to Ajayi himself, he's not the kind of person that I would want to govern as a distant observer, that I would want to govern that state. Spoiler or no spoiler, political contestations come with a lot of factors, a lot of pieces we have to fit into the jigsaw. At the end of the day, it is the calculation that will arrive at, considering all those pieces, considering all those conflicting ideologies and patterns and particularities, that will lead to who we eventually declare, or who INEC is going to eventually declare as the winner. And once that winner emerges, all those calculations, all those permutations, all those questions around spoiler or lack of it will pale into insignificance. In the circumstance, Rufai, we are seeing the results coming out. Do not forget, apart from Agbola, there are other, remote contestants as well. They too are probably garnering some votes. We can as well say that if you add their votes to that of Akeredolu or to that of Jegede, it could probably have helped their causes and make the results much more landslide, or much more clear-cut than we otherwise think is going to become, going by where the figures emerging. So it's not over until it is over, like I said earlier, and the end will probably help us appreciate the process that INEC and other stakeholders have embarked upon, Rufai.
But just to kind of stay on what Rufai has touched on, Professor Adeniyi, what do you think this tells us about the power of having a third party or a third candidate? Because like Rufai said, if you take his votes and you add that to the votes of the PDP, we're almost at an even balance here. So what does that tell us going forward? And to add to that as well, Professor Adeniyi, I also wanted to ask the impact as well of the APC approaching these elections with a strong and united front, unlike in 2016 when everybody who lost against Governor Akeredolu in the primaries sort of ended up working against him. How much of an impact would you say that has had as well?
Yeah, Leila, I think your question is fundamental to the philosophy around democracy. Democracy is about involvement, participation of multi-interest, of multiple interests within diverse cultures. And the world over, democracy, it has been saluted as the best form of government, and even in dictatorships, that we see in Oriental states, like we see in traditional dictatorships, like we see in the Middle East largely, we see some semblance of representation, semblance of democracy through consultation and the deliberative process. So when we see an expanded range of opinion conflicting, of course, it's going to improve on the quality of decision. And that's why, and bring it down to our political process. It was the reason why the Supreme Court, ruled at some point that we should have as many parties as possible. And if we are having as many parties as possible, we are having many individuals coming to contest on the platform of those parties as well. And through that means, of course, we can expand our range of ideas, then grow the quality of our decision and bring about growth and development. Ordinarily, very ideal form, very good thinking. But of course, what happens in our own case, we are perverting the process. People are just using these platforms for negotiations. They are using it as bargaining platforms, pedestals for bargaining, towards some level of aggrandizement. Otherwise, there's no reason to question our having many parties coming in, many candidates coming in. But what is the quality of these candidates, for that matter? Is it just about having many people who come in to contest, or should we be concerned about the quality? I'm not impressed. When I looked at somebody who wants to be the governor of a state, when I see that you lack some level of understanding in terms of some of the programs, some of the issues, some of the things you actually want to implement. It can be very disappointing. Yes, we know the political process cannot really be one of merit, sometimes largely so, but it shouldn't be the norm, really. Conscious attempts should be made to move away from these kind of practice. I agree that if there was some kind of cooperation between them, maybe the result will have been clear-cut. But again, those kind of cooperation prevent the expansion of the space. For us to have a much robust, much more interesting process. It would have been okay if the three of them, were equals in terms of substance, in terms of inform and substance, but of course we can't say that now, given some of the things we have seen in recent time. Overall, it's okay. It's a good day for Ondo State, and however it comes, they will take it like whatever comes out of the present circumstance. I think will be welcome. Will be welcome, most welcome, subject to a free, fair, and transparent process. As could be defined by INEC later.
Right, Dr. Adeniyi, I'm sure if I mention a name as somebody vast in Nigeria political history, I'm sure you remember the name Iyola Omishore. And you know what happened. When it came to the wire in those Osun elections, Iyola Omishore, the third candidate, became a deciding factor. He was a fine bride. They had to do a deal with Iyola Omishore. Just let's posit a scenario.
That's right.
What if Ondo election goes to that place where they might have to do a deal with Agbola Ajayi?
Rufai, I think it's actually it comes back to what we've been talking about. That some of the times, our politicians are hardly altruistic. They hardly look forward to serving the people. They insist on their platform, on owning their own platforms. Believing that even if they do not win, at the end of the day, they have created a pedestal for them to get a bite of the cherry. And if it plays out that, some of the parties, that there's a tie and deals will have, to be closed, of course, it's going to be an opportunity for them, to take as much as possible. And do not forget that the leading candidates are also very smart people. They will throw away all past predilections, all past letdowns, and go for broke, so that they can cut the one who is going to be who can be the beautiful bride in that circumstance. Well, if it happens, it still remains at the level of speculation, Rufai. Okay. But if it does happen, well, we'll just wait and see.
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, Doctor. I mean, that's all we have with Doctor today.